Okay, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there is a big problem. I was going through one of my many junk piles. I found this. There's a note attached to this piece of paper. It says, "Hi, Peter. Maybe you can do us a drawing. We put a stamp already on this postcard so you can drop it in a mailbox. Thanks." On the other side of this piece of paper, I'm covering up their address. They've written their address on it. And the crazy thing about this, the part that shocked me so much is I don't know how long I've had this piece of paper. I don't know when I got it. It could have been eons ago. Ages and ages past. It's ready to go. I'm going to use this Platinum Desk fountain pen because it has a very fine nib and it's a pretty small area. That way I can fit as much as possible onto this small piece of paper. Oh, lately I've been reading this, I've just started reading this book about Captain James Cook, who is famous for sailing a ship around and, well, some people would say discovering things, but obviously there were people there already who had previously discovered them, sometimes hundreds or thousands of years previously, and they were just chilling there. And I've read some other books about what happens when these colonial empires send ships around the globe and meet these people living on islands, usually somewhere in the Pacific or Oceania. And when these people meet, usually a lot of regrettable things happen. Even, it seems to be the case that this James Cook guy was a pretty nice guy. Like, when it comes to a lot of explorers, a lot of them were a lot more exploitative and bloodthirsty and just generally more nasty than James Cook. But even he was, he couldn't, just by putting these places on the map, he was kind of opening them up to be exploited by other people. He couldn't really stop that from happening once he'd started it. And when I say putting them on the map, it seems like one of his main things he was good at was drawing maps. Like, he was a really good cartographer. I don't really know what I was going to say about him, but it's been a fascinating book so far. I'm only in like the second chapter. I think one of his journeys he went on, like, I think this book I'm reading is about his third voyage, and at the beginning it talks about his second voyage, which was like, I think it was like 1,000 days long. He had like this house in England with like a wife and kids, which he never saw. He was like, guys, I've got a calling. I've got to go sailing. I can't be here on land. I can't stand it. I've got to go sailing. So he had this wife, and every time he came in to port, he would impregnate her and leave again, and then the kids would be born. And I think he had seven kids, and I think most of them were born when he wasn't even there, and sometimes they would randomly die also when he wasn't there. He was just like the definition of an absent father, but he was out there exploring, discovering things. On his second voyage, I think his job was to discover this place called Terra Australis, which is not Australia. They were imagining at this time, I think, what is this, like the 1700s or 16? I think it's the 1700s. They were like, hey, we know about all these continents that are up here in the northern hemisphere. All right, we've got North America, we've got Europe. I don't know what else they knew about Asia, right? They're like, hey, there's tons of continents in the northern hemisphere. There's got to be one big mega continent down at the bottom of the southern hemisphere just to balance everything out, because they were legitimately telling each other, if there's no big continent down at the bottom of the earth to balance things out, then we would definitely be spinning off into space into our certain destruction. So they hypothesized there was a what they called a supercontinent down there. They already knew about Australia. They thought it was maybe attached to the bottom of Australia or below Australia. At that time, Australia was called New Holland. And then eventually this Captain Cook guy, he sailed around and he's like, I don't know, guys. I went down there a lot. I looked around. There was just a ton of ice. It was cold. My ship kept freezing. If there's anything down there, it's really far and it's totally encased in ice. I think there's just Australia down here. And so then they eventually called New Holland Australia, and then even later they called, when Antarctica was found, they called it Antarctica. Also, I've just started this book, but this one fact got seared into my brain of somewhere in Polynesia he went to some island. No. This is someone. They're still setting the stage, okay, in this book I'm reading. Like, he hasn't even. I'm guessing they're going to tell the story of him going on his third voyage, and they're setting the stage, telling some background, right? Talking about how someone went to some place in Tahiti. I think is that French Polynesia, somewhere in Polynesia, right? And apparently they had these customs when the Polynesian people were fighting each other. They would sometimes, I think I'm trying to figure out how to say this so that I don't know how the YouTube censoring algorithm works. I might have triggered it already just by mentioning it. I'm trying to describe what they would do to each other without using extremely graphic and violent words. But apparently sometimes when they defeated each other in battle, I'm just telling you what I read in this book, okay? Sometimes when they defeated each other in battle, they would use clubs and beat their defeated opponent's body flat. They would just pummel it until it was flat, and then they would cut a hole in the abdomen, and then they would stick their head in that hole and wear the body like a victory hat. Isn't that amazing? I would have never been that creative. Really amazing. Okay, let me move on. That's really, like I said, I'm only in the first or second chapter of this book, and it's already crazy. But this drawing, more importantly, let me get back on topic, is when I'm done with this, as you'll see in the end of the video, I'm just going to toss this thing in the mail, which feels a little weird because, yeah, it has an address and a stamp on it already. It should be good to go. I add a little message on there apologizing for being so slow. It says, and I just tossed it in the mailbox, which is weird because usually when I send people drawings that I've done, when I send them art, I put it in like a very stiff photo mailer, and then I put that photo mailer in another stiff photo mailer, right? Like, I'm trying to give it some support and protection so it doesn't get bent and damaged and stuff like that. But then here I was just putting this postcard just right into the mail, all by itself, all by its lonesome, kind of just like that. And that it seemed kind of beautiful to me, but it also kind of felt like it was just kind of walking around in its underwear. It felt weird, kind of like sneezing with no hand. Like it's not downright wrong, but it doesn't also feel like the way it should be done, right? Kind of like walking on a freshly mopped floor. It's like, you can do it, but you wish you didn't have to. Kind of like eating right after brushing your teeth. You're like, maybe I should have done this in a different order. Kind of like directly touching your eyeball with your finger, or touching a computer monitor that's not a touchscreen. Well, that last one, I don't know. Some people some people don't even think twice about touching a computer monitor. And you've got to watch those people that keep their grubby hands away from your screens. And you can tell who they are because sometimes you see them at their computer with their laptop. Their screens are smudged, so smudgy. Or, yeah, leaving your windows down in the rain. I mean, you can do it. It just seems wrong. So I don't know. I think it's a little fun experiment putting my art out there in the world in a real way, in the sense that I'm sending this to an address, but it's going to get some air, some light, some exposure on the way. You know, some other people are going to touch it. Some machines are going to touch it probably. So we'll see. All right. See you all later. Thanks for listening, watching, and